Hi, I'm Genesis Silva, and I am a senior at School Without Walls. I am in the program Career Pathways to Public Safety. I am the only female in my firefighter class, which inspired me to do my project, Challenges Women Face in Firefighting. The challenges women face. So my first slide is societal beliefs about women and men generated from male firefighting tradition. So to begin, women don't believe that they can be capable of becoming a firefighter. Women often don't feel like they are able to take on the job of a firefighter because it's deemed as a man's job and not a woman's job. And women may not have the support of their spouse, partner in pursuing a fire service career. A lot of men are intimidated by women going into this field because they see that they're surrounded by men, or mostly by men, so they feel intimidated, or they don't feel trustworthy of their partner when they're surrounded or in this environment. The next bullet states perceived conflict between a woman's self-image as a woman and her work as a firefighter. So there's conflict that a woman has because as a woman, you can't really, or as a woman in this field, while at work, you can't really see yourself as a woman because it's more of a man's job. So you have to close out that woman image, and you have to reach the standards of what it looks like to be a firefighter, which is a fireman. The next bullet states, women who want to be firefighters don't want to be the first or only women on the job or in the firehouse. A lot of women are intimidated by this because they know that going into this field it's going to be different, and it's going to be really changing or life-changing for them because they're going into a field that is male-dominated. So they go in intimidated by all these men and thinking like, am I good enough? Am I capable enough to take on this job and do this job while being surrounded by these men? Women don't trust the fire department's motivation for hiring women and what level of real support will be provided in the long run. There have been a lot of cases where women have been through sexual harassment, have been through bullying because they're a woman, have been through so many things, and they're still unjustified. They still haven't reached their justice, and that's why they feel that they don't see the fire department's motivation to keep them and support them in the long run, because they don't see that support in other women. So that makes them think, well, is it going to be the same for me? And in their motivation for hiring women, which I can go back to why they don't believe that they can be capable of becoming a firefighter, the way that the firefighter culture looks like, the way that it makes it look like, or the firefighter society makes it look like a man's job. So women don't feel accepted, or they don't feel supported coming into this kind of field. The lack of public support for women's presence in the fire service based on a general perception that women cannot do the job and are just being hired because of affirmative action. This talks about how women are seen as, or you're only hired, or the society sees women as, you're only being hired because you're a woman, and they're not trustworthy that a woman can actually take on this job. Society isn't trustworthy of women doing this job. And what I see it as is we have to change the way society views this, because this isn't a man's job. It isn't a man's job or a woman's job. It's a man and a woman's job. It isn't only for one gender or one sex. It's for men and women. And this perception that is viewed upon women, it just shows like, oh, well, you're not capable enough to do this job. You're not worthy enough to do this job. And they think that just because they're doing the job, they think that they're hired just because they're women, and there needs to be more diversity in the firehouses, in the fire departments. Yes, that is true that there needs to be more diversity, but that isn't the only reason why they're hired. They're hired because they've went through the training. They're hired because they've went through the CPAT, all the tests that you have to take. They've been through all that, and that's why they were hired, not based on the fact that they're a woman. They were hired based on their credentials. And on the next slide, we have physical demands. And when firefighters are thought of, people think of muscular, bulky men, not smaller frame women. The majority of men are naturally stronger than women, so to society, women aren't fit for the job. In a field where physical standards were created by men, for men, women have to live up to those standards in order to become a firefighter. And when I state this, the fire department or the fire job used to be only for men. So the standards that were created were for men. And now that it's starting to change, or has been starting to change, women going into this have to fulfill those standards that were created for men. It isn't an impossible thing to do, but it is much more difficult for most women to fulfill the requirements than it is for men. Many women do not become firefighters because of the lack of strength they retain, which is why the first piece of advice given to a lady is to work out and to build lots of strength and endurance. And I can testify to this because everywhere I go, or field trips that we go on, I'm always told to work on my muscles, to work on building strength, to work on building endurance, and to work on the physical, because to this job there are physical demands. It is really hard for a woman to be in this field just because women aren't naturally as stronger as men. And also, as a firefighter, working smarter, not harder, is vital when it comes to conserving your energy. This goes to all firefighters, no matter if you're a man or a woman. But it is especially important for women because they have to work strategically if they are not able to work off of their strength. So there are a lot of programs where they teach women how to use their bodies and not their strength, if that makes sense. Like, not focus so much on their strength, but work as the body of a woman and how to strategize with your own body. The next slide is women naturally have to prove themselves. And there are stereotypes on jobs based on gender. The fire service places women firefighters at a disadvantage because they view them based on gender and not on their power to facilitate the job. And like I've said this before, the fire service or the society, it makes it look like women can't do it. They already expect women to fail. They don't expect them to be able to pull their own weight and actually do the job. And since there's a smaller number of women in departments, it's always more noticeable and anticipated when a woman can't pull her own weight, which causes everyone to be on the lookout while critiquing her. And my question is, why isn't this expected of men? Why don't we look at men and say, oh, you can't, like, why don't we look at men and critique men and say, oh, he can't pull his own weight? We don't look at men and instantly think that. We only think that when we see a woman, because we're already expecting for her not to be able to do her own job. And when I see this, it's unfair, because if you're not going to think of that when you see a man, then don't think of it when you see a woman. So that's just something for you to think about. Why isn't this expected of men? Many firewomen say they struggle with getting people to take them serious. Also, it's hard not to mentally break down when you have numerous people doubting and criticizing you, said Blackman she is a firefighter in Chicago, I believe. And it's sad that when women have to carry that weight along with the weight of the actual job, they really struggle. And it's just like, if you're a firefighter and you know that a woman has to deal, and you know that a firefighter has to deal with the stress of the job, of the actual job, having to fight the fires and be in that physical stress and mental stress, because you do see things that aren't things that you would want to see on a daily basis. And it's sad that firefighters see this, or firemen see this, and they yet oppress women with making them carry that weight, that, yeah, you're a woman and we think you can't do this. Well, if you see the weight of the actual job, then why are you oppressing them and making and adding to that weight? Why are you putting more stress on them? The fire service is a strong brotherhood and sisterhood, and our individual relationships should always remain strong and supportive. There is no room for gender bashing at the firehouse or elsewhere on the job, said Blockman. And my question is, then why is it allowed for women to feel this way? If the fire service is a strong brotherhood and sisterhood, and it should remain strong and supportive, then why aren't women being supported? Why is there room for gender bashing in the firehouse? Why are women still being oppressed? The next slide is resistance from some elements of the workforce. Women in firehouses and fire departments have endured sexual harassment, physically and verbally, behavior based on their gender. So just because a woman, men seem to think that they're able to abuse them verbally and physically just because they're a woman. And first of all, sexual harassment is illegal, and this is in firehouses, and this is true because fire departments wouldn't lose millions of dollars due to cases of sexual harassment if this were not true. So, and there were many cases. There are many cases, and I implore you to look them up because there are an exuberant amount of cases. Skepticism about a woman's ability to be a firefighter. Like I've said, there are a lot of disbeliefs that a woman has the ability to be a firefighter. And when a woman goes on the job and she sees that her firemen or that her fellow coworkers don't think that she's able to do the job, that loses her motivation to actually want to be in the fire department. Uncertainty over behavioral expectations in a mixed gender workforce. When a woman is in a room with other men, she doesn't know what or how to act. Like it's a way where she has to change who she is into a more male appearance, I guess. So women have to lower the way they're seen as women. So women are usually seen as sensitive and more emotional, where men aren't. So women have to kind of put their feelings aside and go into more of what a man is seen to be like and apply herself to that. So she has to leave who she is behind in order to raise those expectations or to meet those expectations as a fireman or just a man in general. Women on the job is perceived as a threat to self-image. So when I say this, what I mean by this is that women being on the job threatens men because this is deemed as a man's job. So when a man's job when a woman is doing a man's job, it's threatening to them because it makes them seem less stronger, basically. Distrust of women's motivation for becoming a firefighter. So, as a firefighter or as a woman who wants to be a firefighter, when I tell people that, they're like, "Oh, really? Like, you want to be a firefighter?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, I want to be a firefighter. Like, what's wrong with that?" And they're like, "But you're a woman. Do you think you can do that?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, like I can do it. Like, why would you think that I can't do it?" And it's just that distrust that I have, that distrust that people have in me, that I can't do the job, that I don't have the motivation to do the job. And it's just like, well, why don't you trust that I can do it? Why don't you trust that I want to be in this? Why don't you trust that I can become a firefighter eventually? The next topic is institutional barriers. And in this one, we see fire stations are built to accommodate only one sex in sleeping, bathing, restroom, and changing facilities. There was a case in which It was a firehouse, and the firehouse was only for men. So, yes, it costs money to build because, okay, let me just backtrack. Let me not get ahead of myself. So, fire stations are built to accommodate only one sex. So, since firefighting is it's more of a man's job. It's deemed as a man's job, or since it was back then. So, since firefighting is deemed as a man's job, and it was a man's job back then, some facilities are still made for men. The facilities are still only for men. So there aren't separate bathrooms for women. There aren't separate sleeping rooms for women. There aren't separate changing facilities or like showers for women. And this is still going on. So and like I was talking about and there was a case where a woman, there was only one woman in the whole firehouse. And since firehouses have different shifts, when she wasn't on her shift, there was men staying in the women's side of the facilities. So the men would go into the women's facilities, and they would sleep in there, they would bathe, they would use the bathrooms, they would change in there, they would shower in there. And it's just crazy to me, because just because a woman isn't there doesn't change the fact that it's for a woman. And it doesn't give firemen the right to abuse that is a room for women. Next is hair and grooming policies based on men's styles and needs. So this is pretty simple. It's just a lot of women have long hair, and not a lot of men have long hair. So a lot of the policies are based on how men have their short hair, how men have their beards, and all this. So it's really just based on, or the policies for hair and grooming are just based on the men's look, the men's appearance, but it isn't based on women's appearance. And the lack of child care options for workers on 24-hour shifts. And I just learned that my lieutenant, now she's a captain, my previous lieutenant, or that she's now Captain Zelinsky, I think she made the code or the policies for women who have kids or have for child care options, basically. So, and I don't really know too much about it, but I know that there wasn't one before, and she's the one that made it. And it's just like, we are in 2018 right now. Why is this just now being made? Why hasn't it been made before? Like, why did we wait so long to make this? When women see this, that there's a lack of child care options, that does not make them want to come into this field. It does not make them want to join the firefighter departments, because this just shows that they aren't being supported. So inadequate policies regarding firefighter pregnancy and reproductive safety, and inadequate information about the risks of firefighting to pregnancy. So when I was researching, I was reading in this article that a woman posted, and she was talking about, or a firewoman posted, and she was talking about how she was walking around her department, and she's seen all these posters that were warning signs, and they were warning about the effects that firefighting can have on you. But when she noticed that they were only for men, that these signs were only showing the effects or the risks that can happen to men, but they weren't showing the risks that can happen to a woman who wants to get pregnant, or who is getting pregnant, or who is trying to, or is already pregnant. It doesn't show the risks to that. It doesn't show the risk to her reproductive system, but they showed the risk to the reproductive system of a man, and it showed how men can have prostate cancer, basically just risks for men, but they didn't highlight the risks that can happen for a woman. And this is just crazy to me, because there are women who are working in fire departments. Like, there aren't a lot of women, but there still are women. So why aren't women being warned about the risks that it takes to be on this job? Why aren't women being warned that there are effects, there are risks, there are bad things that can come out of firefighting for your body, there are physical risks. So why aren't women being warned about that? Why are only men being warned? And another institutional barrier is protective gear and uniforms are designed to fit men and not women. So my lieutenant and Captain Selinsky, she was talking about how her gear and her uniforms, they didn't fit her. And she had to go through this long process just to get the right uniforms that could fit her. And the sizes are made for men. The sizes, the way that they're designed is made for men. But if there are fire women, then why aren't they designed to fit both? Why aren't there equipments designed to fit women and not just men? Because if women have to use the uniforms designed to fit men, then there are problems, just as she had. She had a problem where her uniform didn't fit her, and she had to go through this long process just to get the right uniform, just to get the right measurements, and that is not okay. A woman or a firefighter cannot do their job if they don't have the correct protective gear and uniforms. They can't do their job if they don't have the correct PPE. I have a quick video that I want to show. And it's on wildland firefighting, but it still pertains to all women, not just women who are going into wildland firefighting.
There are a lot of places where it is hard to be a woman in fire. I know a lot of women who have left fire because they did not feel supported or felt like there wasn't room for them to continue to grow. Women who are passed up for training opportunities, or women who are passed up for promotions when their peers are promoted with the same skill sets. And that's been a problem throughout fire nationwide.
As a woman in the fire world, you move through it differently. You know, you get treated a little bit differently. I have worked with a lot of really wonderful men, but sometimes they just don't get it. They've never experienced being the minority in the fire community.
There's been quite a few situations that I've gone through where there were comments made about women in fire and how they won't last, or how women belong raising families and not on the fire line, or just simply being told you're not strong enough for this job.
Women who complain that they hear inappropriate things all the time, harassment. Have you encountered any of that?
Yes.
Yes. All those things? Are they stark to you? Are they things that you remember? Or how do you deal with them when it happens? Do you just brush them off?
That's a good question. I don't know if I do deal with them very well.
Mm-hmm.
I just try to be grateful for the moment I'm in and look at the silver lining.
This particular Trex is pretty special, especially for me, having come up in fire as a woman and a minority in the field. Being able to talk about it in this avenue here is really motivating.
I was completely overwhelmed when I walked in the door. Emotions, inexperience, insecurity, because I was realizing the caliber of human dignity that was in the room.
To meet someone, I've never even met this many women in fire, let alone like have them all in the same room.
It's been really neat. There's been a lot of good discussion about the role of women in fire, the different leadership strengths that women can bring to the fire environment in a male-dominated field. Fire is a career where people are passionate. It's really sad to see women who have that drive who don't continue because of the culture that they're surrounded by. I think that there are a lot of women here who are persevering, and it's really neat to get everyone together to be able to talk about what it is that motivates us to get us through.
So here is a survey that was done on firefighters and all, and it was titled Discrimination or Harassment Experienced by Firefighters. And of course, women and men were split up, and they had to do their own surveys. And under the women category, you see that the percentages are higher, and or such as I have encountered problems with ill-fitting equipment. 79.7% of women said that they did have problems, and 20.9% of men said that they had problems. I have experienced different treatment because of my gender. 84.7% of women agreed to this, and 12.4% of men agreed to this. So we see that drastic change. We see that drastic difference between what women go through and what men go through, and this is proof of that. This isn't just a chart with random percentages. This is truth. You guys can just look through that. Look at that. Firefighter recruitment and hiring. So a lot of women have or go through a selection process, which they aren't really, or they're more undermined in this. They're more, or there isn't like more recruitment and hiring for women. It's always like recruitment for men, is what I'm trying to say. So, if I can just read some off. I'll just read the first one. My department recruits and hires women above and beyond its general recruiting efforts. The percentage for women was 35.6%, and the men percentage was 69.3%. And I just think that's funny to me. It's just funny to me because you see that men think that women are being recruited and women are being hired, but I don't think they see it in a women's point of view, where women don't see that there are many women on the job as themselves. Men just see it as, well, there's women there, or I think when men see it in a way that it's, well, there's women here, so that is kind of a way that we do recruit and hire women. But is there a certain amount of women that, or is there an equal amount of women as men, is what I'm trying to say. And I highly doubt that. So there are some more questions there. And this one was on circumstances which most reduce women firefighters' rating of their careers. And this was just, or I can read about it. Women firefighters in our survey were asked to rate firefighting as if they were advising a young woman considering the career on a scale of 1 equals worst career and 5 being best career. The column reports the change in this rating associated with each response, divided by women respondents' average rating of 3.8. And you see all the different things that women have responded to, the impact of them, and such as gender-based, mealtime-related incidents, race-based incidents, verbal harassment incidents. So yeah. And my question to society really, or to you, is when will it end? Because you are either the next generation in society, or you are already in society, partaking in society. So when will it end? And can you be the change? Can you influence the change and actually change the firefighter culture and society's culture of viewing women as not having the ability to do the job. So that's my question to you. When will it end? And the culture needs to change. Increasing the numbers of hired, adequate women is a step. And although it is a step, it isn't the solution to a meaningful shift in the culture. Yes, you can increase the numbers of hiring women. Yes, you can increase that, but that isn't the solution to changing the culture, because yes, women can be on the job, but that doesn't necessarily keep them on the job. If they are hired, yes, they're on the job, but that doesn't keep them wanting to be a firefighter. And that is because women have to be fully accepted as members of the group, which they can't be if their success as a firefighter continues to be derailed by harassment, unsatisfying work conditions, and the anticipation for them to fail. Regardless of gender, individuals should feel supported as if they belong in their workplace, which women aren't. Women aren't being supported. If women were being supported, then the way the culture is wouldn't be making them feel less motivated to join or to go into this field. If women weren't being supported, there would be warning signs for them. If women were being supported, there would be the PPE would be designed to fit them, which is personal protective equipment. If they were being supported, then they wouldn't feel so oppressed coming into the firefighting field. They wouldn't feel so intimidated by men coming into this field. They would feel accepted. In order for women to be equally successful as men in this profession, fire departments must prioritize having a culture that is inclusive to women. And I don't say this because I want to I don't want women to sound as I don't want women to be seen as a second-class citizen or second class when we look at firefighting. I want women to be as equal as men, equally successful as men are in this profession. This is a male-dominated field, and I don't want it to be seen as a male-dominated field. What I'm trying to say is, I think women should be equal to men, not just second class. And the fire departments, they do have to prioritize. They do have to implore having a culture that is inclusive to women, that does include women, that does support women. And this starts with society, this starts with the firefighter culture, this starts in the fire departments, in firehouses, it starts with everyone. Because if we want the culture to change, then everyone has to change it. Everyone has to do their part. And it won't change until everyone does do their part. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys are interested in the CPPS program, you should contact your counselor or contact the program coordinator, Robert Poles.